Hello and welcome to our webinar, How to Install a Floor Heating System in Less Than a Day for Tile.
Correct.
And I'm Julia Billen. I'm the owner here at WarmlyYours, and my lovely sidekick is...
Scott. Well, your lovely sidekick couldn't make it today, but you got me instead, and I'm Scott. Hello, everybody.
I'll take it. Now, was Rome built in a day?
No.
Trick question. You weren't ready for that, were you?
No, I was not.
All right, but we are going to be talking about how to install electric floor heating in a day.
Mhm.
We're specifically talking about tile and stone because the final flooring surface, it matters.
Right.
Okay, so we have, not only is Scott lovely, but it's got some IQ points there too. So if you have any questions, share them. We have the lovely sidekick Olivia off camera because she's got lots to do, and she'll be helping with your questions. She'll be just shouting them out as they come in.
We can't show her because she's not wearing Merlot. We've already talked about that. So, but you might hear her voice over there. So good.
And then we always ask for questions in advance. We did get a few of your questions in. We will be covering them as we move through the presentation where it makes most sense.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
All right. So we're going to go over a few things today. Let's break it down. What can everybody expect to learn about?
We're going to talk, well, kind of coincidentally, we're going to be talking about floor heating.
All right.
And then we're going to be talking about TempZone product with the Prodeso uncoupling membrane. We'll also talk about the product cost because that's always what people are very interested in.
Are we actually going to review a project though?
Yeah, we're going to see one that was actually installed. So it all kind of comes together.
Excellent. All right, so let's get it started. For those of you that are new to radiant heating or radiant floor heating, specifically for us, there's many reasons why you and or your clients, hey, we're just getting some shout outs. There are many reasons why you and your clients might want to have radiant heating in their home. There's efficiencies, there's a quality factor, there's a localization factor. What would you say are the top 3 reasons why you should consider radiant heating in general?
Radiant heating warms you.
Okay.
Instead of warming the air.
Mhm.
So instead of burning and scorching the air and then pumping that air through your entire house, what you do is you heat the room that you're in and you heat yourself in that room.
And all the objects.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
And then that will give you the nice even heat that you see here, spaced comfortably throughout the room. And if you are in the Midwest or someplace that has basements, even more so on this right side drawing, because a lot of times the air vents will be above. And what happens is the air comes about 2/3 of the way down when it's warm. And then as it cools off, it goes right back up to the ceiling.
And yeah, I've experienced that where, my HVAC system, it kicks in. I can feel the rush of that air in. I can hear the rush of that air. And then I'm warm. But then, maybe 15, 20 minutes later, I'm starting to feel that chill again.
Yeah, and depends on where you sit in the room, because you may have a cold air return near you, and all that's doing is pulling cold air down around your toes.
Right.
So you end up with a nice hot top of the head and freezing toes. So that's where this product that heats from the ground up and heats the entire space is much more comfortable.
And that's one of the factors that makes it energy efficient because you actually have the heat that is going in all directions. It hits those objects. Those objects can retain that heat. And then you are warmer faster and with less degrees, if you will.
Yeah, the room doesn't have to be heated to a temperature that's real high. It's like sitting outside in front of a bonfire. The air is still 20 degrees, but if you're in front of that bonfire, you're nice and warm because the radiant energy is warming you.
Right.
The air is still cold. So that's the idea behind the radiant floor heating in these particular rooms we're showing right now, why the left side is so much more comfortable than the product on the right.
And one of the things I love about radiant heating, I do have it in my home, shocker. I've been doing this 20 years, so I actually have it in every room of my house. And what that allows me to do is to zone in. There are rooms in my home, and I'm sure yours as well. For example, that dining room that gets used 3 or 4 times a year, the basement that gets used maybe when you have the occasional overflow of guests. I have another room where I keep my birds. So all of these rooms sometimes get used less frequently than others. And then there are also rooms where you might want the temperature to be different. The room for my birds is at a higher temperature. The room for my daughter's bedroom is at an even higher temperature because I think she was born in the Amazon. And then, we have other rooms, my dining room that really does not get used. We eat in the kitchen.
Right.
That just gets turned on 3 or 4 times a year.
If there's nobody in the room, there's no need to heat it.
Yeah. So that's what I love. So energy efficient, quality coming from the floor, warming the objects. I think we got it right.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't like to spend a lot of time putting it in. They want to go from start to end really quickly. And that's kind of what this whole thing is about.
This is why we're talking about that. But we did sort of want to talk about radiant heating in general. And now let's get real specific because, so what does the radiant heating, how does it come from the floor? It comes from the floor. It's installed at the same time as you would remodel your flooring, or if you're building, it's installed just before the final flooring surface. And in this particular case, we're talking about tile or stone. And marble, slate,
Whatever.
all of these are popular flooring options, especially tile. So now let's talk about what those products look like and why do I see 4 different products here?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to heat that particular space. That's why you need to tell us what's the subfloor and what's this final flooring, because we're going to tell you what goes in between.
And one of these products is going to go in between. Now, let's walk through left to right, top to bottom, if you will, each one of these and just, in your opinion, where do you think this works best? So we'll start with TempZone Flex Roll.
TempZone Flex Roll is easy to lay out because the cable is already attached to the mesh every 3 inches. So you simply run it out, cut it and turn it and run it back the other direction.
So you don't have to worry about figuring out the spacing?
No, because the spacing's already done for you. And 9 times out of 10, we will have a plan for you. If you ask for one, we'll give you a plan that shows you exactly how to lay out your system.
Excellent. And then from there, we go to the Easy Mat. Can I take this one?
Sure.
All right. So what I love about these Easy Mats, it really is easy, but these are for just a particular spot. Some people even call this spot heating. So these are mats. They're not rolls. Well, they kind of look like a roll, but they're not meant to be cut. Whereas the Flex Roll is cut. The fiberglass, never the heating element.
You're learning. Look at that.
Getting there after 20 years, is cut so that the fiberglass mesh is cut so that you can kind of cover the footprint of the room. The Easy Mat is used when you're just looking at doing a specific spot. For example, very popular in bathrooms. So let's assume you want to have the area in front of your vanity. I'm a woman. That's where I spend most of my time. You want to have that area especially warm, but you may not care about other areas of the bathroom. Might be on a budget. This Easy Mat is perfect for those scenarios. You just put it in the spot you want it, and that's all it's going to heat is that spot. Easy.
Right. The last thing you want to do is you want to try to cover the entire room with Easy Mats because now all of a sudden you have 4, 5, 6, or 7 different connections. You don't want to do that. If you're going to cover a major portion of your room, you would want to use one of the other systems because then you only have one connection.
Right.
So that's one thing to think about. And what we always have to talk about with people that don't have a lot of experience with radiant floor heat is that you can't just put it in the center of the room and have the entire floor be warm. You have to put it where you want it to be warm.
Right.
So that's why it's so important. If you want it warm in front of the vanity, that's where it goes.
Exactly. I always tell people, walk the room. Think about what your foot is going to touch. That's the area that you want to specify needs to be warm.
Right. So let's talk about the custom mat and the TempZone cable.
Okay.
So the custom mat is actually you give us the dimensions of your space, and then we would make 1 or 2 different size mats depending on how big they have to be. And then that would be simply made to fit the contours of your specific room. So you can see why it's so important to get good measurements because you can't change it out in the field. These other products we're talking about can be moved around and adjusted and that sort of thing. The TempZone custom mat is pretty much set it and forget it.
Yes.
So it's very, very important to get correct dimensions.
And I think what I love about the custom mat is you, again, you really have to have accurate dimensions, but you don't have to worry about anyone cutting the cable accidentally You know, it's with the flex roll, the TempZone, the top left, that the fiberglass mesh is always cut to configure to the room. With the TempZone, it's already configured.
Right.
So that's a perfect product if you're concerned about installer
Simplicity.
Simplicity,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Fewer hookups, and it's going to fit an exact area without you trying to figure anything out in the field.
Okay, like that. And then our final product?
The final product is the cable product that we're going to be using today because it allows for the ultimate fastest install.
Okay.
It's a little more labor intensive than say a TempZone flex roll because you roll it out and you turn it. But a lot of people have to do a 2-stage installation with the TempZone roll, whereas the cable, you have to put it in manually in the Prodeso. And we're going to see that later. But it does take a little bit more time to get the cable where you want it. But once you're done with that, you can start tiling.
So in general, 4 options, but one of these is best suited for same day install. If you're looking for other options, they're there, but that may require a 2-day install.
Right.
Or a morning and then a late afternoon.
Correct.
Depending on how fast your adhesive sets.
So let's talk about getting that 1 day accomplished.
I'm with you. All right, how to install on a day, and it's called Prodeso.
Yeah, so the Prodeso uncoupling membrane is going to be doing a couple jobs for you. It helps with isolating the tile from the subfloor. So if the subfloor moves, it doesn't translate into the tile. So it does that for you. Another thing that it does is it allows you to do this installation very quickly because once you get the Prodeso put down on the floor, you put the cable in and then you can start tiling right at that moment.
So that's the magic. The Prodeso is the magic. It's what's making it happen in 1 day.
Correct.
Or less in some cases. Yep. Okay. So it's not just, I mean, it's magical, but it's not that magical. It actually, that's the installation membrane. But you have the heating element. You see that top right? You want to just point to that, Mr.
Sure.
Scotty? So you have the heating element with the return power lead right there. And you have a control always so that you can control the temperature of the floor heating. And then under that, looks like a little hockey puck, is the circuit check. So there's 4 must-have items. Which one of these do you love the best, Scott?
The one I love the best is unfortunately the one we forgot. Which is the digital ohm meter.
Well,
we've got to have that.
I'm sure we've got an image later of that, Scotty.
We do, but that's my favorite one. I feel so bummed that it's not on this slide. But anyway, what you have here is you've got all the pieces that you're going to need to get that installation done.
And these come from us. So with every install, with every purchase, you'll have a heating element, a thermostat, a circuit check, and then, you know, if you want to do it in 1 day, you would add in the Prodeso.
Right.
If you don't want to do it in a day and you're still using cable, you would have something called fixing strips.
You manually just string it back and forth across the floor.
Yeah.
The one thing about the thermostat is it just doesn't help you change the temperature. You do have to have some control of some sort, but you also get your GFI protection in the thermostat. The GFI protection is required by the National Electric Code.
In bathrooms and kitchens.
And your locality may even require it in other places too. So you always want to check out that. But what this does, this thermostat lets you control the floor heat, but it also provides the safety of the GFCI also. So that's why there's no circuit breaker here, because you would install this system on a normal circuit breaker. No need to get a special expensive GFI breaker.
And speaking of electrical, if it's a larger install, probably would go on its own circuit. If it's a smaller job, it could potentially go in on a pre-existing circuit. The thermostat comes with the price. Yes, when is a question coming in. When we provide a quote, we always provide a quote with the heating element and with a thermostat. If someone orders and they actually don't include some type of control, we flag that. We don't even let it ship until we've spoken directly with the customer to say, hey, just want you to know, because what sometimes happens is people think they can just put this on their pre-existing thermostat or some simple thermostat
Switch.
or a switch that they picked up at Home Depot. And that's not the case. Heating elements need to be on a GFCI thermostat. And these thermostats always also come with a floor sensor, and that's a sensor that's in the box with the control that is put in the floor. I think we might have a photo of that later.
Yes.
We do. So we'll show that. And that sensor is connected to the back of the thermostat. And that sensor is what's regulating, helping to regulate and determine the temperature of the flooring. How did I do?
Very good.
Okay, good. I hope that answers your question there.
So let's go on to the cross section. We talked about earlier, you need to tell us what your final flooring is and what your subfloor is, because we're going to figure out the magic in between those two layers. So what we have here is we have an installation cross section, and ding, ding, ding. This is slide number 8. We have a couple of questions on slide number 8 that we've got sent into us in advance. So if we take a look at this, you can see we have a tile floor, which is what you told us you were going to be installing. And you also told us that you have a wood subfloor, which is what most bathrooms are, especially second floor bathrooms.
Yes.
So if you take a look at that, you can see that you've got your wood subfloor. And then what we do is we build from the subfloor on up. So here's our subfloor. Here is our unmodified or modified thin set.
Does it matter?
This layer does matter, according to Prodeso's manufacturer, to make sure that you match it with the right subfloor.
Okay.
So some subfloors require unmodified thin set where others don't.
Okay.
So in the instruction manual, you'll see I've got this certain subfloor. I need to make sure I have this certain type of thin set.
Or just call our tech support hotline.
Yeah, we'll be glad to help you with that
we
too.
can definitely help you through that.
So what we then have is after this layer of thin set, you then have the Prodeso uncoupling membrane. Then inside of that membrane goes the heating cable.
So
obviously.
that right there, that square looking feature.
Yep. And then you have the unmodified or modified thin set above, which is a selling point for some people who have specific needs to use modified thin set to be able to lay a specific type of tile. Then you can do that with the Prodeso. There are other companies that say it has to be unmodified all the time. With Prodeso, that's not true. You can use modified or unmodified thin set. So that goes out to Yvonne, who asked what specific type needs to be used. And we've just talked about that.
And the Prodeso was the first membrane on the market. So I think from the beginning, they did it right.
Right.
Yeah.
And this should also help with Yvonne and Kenny's questions. Both asked something very similar. And that's why we wanted to discuss it right here, because it does allow you to use unmodified thin set above it. And there are some, if you want to get into the nitty gritty, there are some thin set manufacturers that actually have documentation that show you what systems to use with the Prodeso to make sure not only do you get the Prodeso's guarantee, but you get the thin sets guarantee also. So there are two or three companies that say you are going to be cool using this stuff and we guarantee it.
Not cool, dude.
Awesome.
Warm.
Oh, warm. Right. Okay. Radical.
All right. So great overview of, the sandwich, if you will. I really like that. I think that helps people to understand how it all fits together.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a big sandwich.
All right. So we're going to talk about a specific project. Give me a little intro. This, I would assume, is a tile installation over Prodeso using cable.
Right.
Anything else I should know?
Well, if you look here, you will have the total wattage called out. We'll always let you know what your wattage is going to be, what your amp draw is going to be, what size breaker you want it to be put on. So that information is always there in the plan that you get from us.
All right. So we send back a smart plan. You send us a floor plan. We'll talk about that. We're going to review a floor plan in detail. But typically, that's how the whole process starts. You send us a drawing of the room, and from there, we determine which product we will use, or we'll decide that together. We'll even determine the control. We do default to one that we know is the most popular. We'll tell you how to do the install with the heating element, and we'll give you all the electrical information as well as the operating cost, how much it costs to operate this per hour. And you can see all of it right there. So this is a great tool to hand over to your electrician, because that's the number one thing that you want to check. You want to make sure, well, it's not the number one thing, but you want to make this a priority to check with your electrician, because you want to make sure that you have the amps available, right? And you also want to make sure
that they know exactly what they're hooking up. That will let them know what size wire they need.
Whether it's 120 volt
120 or
versus 240 volt, because believe it or not, some of the things that can happen is someone connects it to the wrong voltage. That's a big thing that happens. Sometimes folks don't have enough amps available in their circuit panel. So check those things. A little bit of planning goes a long way. So
right. What we try to do is, because sometimes people don't have a lot of space in their breaker box. They only have 1 or 2 slots. A 120 volt system takes 1 slot. A 240 volt system takes 2 slots.
Okay.
So that's why 9 times out of 10 in a bathroom, we're going to quote 120. First of all, because you can heat usually up to 120 square feet or around there on one control using 120 volts. So that's going to be the best match, because there is no efficiency difference between 240 and 120, even though a lot of people think that's the case. 120 is just as efficient as 240 is. But what you're doing by using 120 as much as you can is you're saving one of the spots in your breaker box.
Nice.
So that's why we always do that.
And those are the kind of tips that you can get if you call in and use our tech support team to make sure that everyone is on board with the project. We always recommend that. Before we move away, and we do have another question, does it work on LVP? So we'll address that for sure. But before we move on from this slide, energy efficiency, you talked about it again. Here's 40 square feet. It's 8 cents to operate an hour.
Right. Very, very inexpensive.
What a great way to heat your home.
And the thing is, you're not going to be heating this all the time either. If you work, you're going to be heating it in for a couple hours in the morning and then for a few hours at night. There's no reason to run it really hot temperatures when no one's there. It gets back to the whole zoning thing. Why heat a space that no one's in? That's what's so great about this product, is you can keep your thermostat in your home set to 65, but in the morning you can walk into a nice warm bathroom because you've turned it up to be warm in the morning. And then when you leave, it drops down and you come back at night and it's nice and warm again for you.
Yeah, so you might warm your bathroom 4 to 6 hours a day. So as you can see, per day, that's a great,
very inexpensive.
Yeah, that's a great rate. All right, let's move on. But we do have a question. Does it work on is that LVT, Olivia, or LVP?
Planks, or P usually stands for planks. LVT for luxury vinyl tile. This product, first of all, the main impetus of doing this particular installation is doing it in one day. Okay, so what we're showing you is the absolute fastest way to install it. Now, if you are going to be adding things like LVT, you are going to then be deviating off of this really fast install and going into one that's going to be a little more labor intensive. Right. Because what we do with LVT is, because of the pliability in the product, we suggest that it's mounted over a self-leveler. Yeah, and we would not recommend the Prodeso membrane to install it. Technically you can, but 9 times out of 10, what you're doing, if you're not using this for crack suppression, there's really no reason for it. So if you're doing LVT, we would do what we did in your 1 bedroom at your house, and we would simply be using the cable, stringing it back and forth in the strips, and then covering with self-leveling. Yeah. So the bottom line, yes, absolutely. You can use radiant floor heating with luxury vinyl tile. As a matter of fact, year over year, we do a webinar on luxury vinyl tile. We have one coming up in April. So visit us so that you can see step by step how to do that. Second Thursday of April at 1 p.m. We'll be here to talk about luxury vinyl tile. And that is not an April Fool. All right. So this is back to what I was talking about earlier. You send us a sketch. All right. So this is the sketch of the project that we just showed you the electrical information for, 40 square feet. What do we like to see on the sketch? We need dimensions.
Dimensions
So,
are good.
for us to be able to scale this, we need to know what size this wall is
Mhm.
and what length that wall is. So that will tell us how we're going to fit this particular product in here. And we're
Mhm.
not going to be going under anything that's permanently installed. So we're going to then take this drawing and we're going to show you how we're going.
I can't wait. Let's do it. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And that's the drawing that you're going to get back from us.
What is it?
That's what we call a smart plan.
We do. And why is it smart?
Because it tells you exactly what product is going to be installed, and all that information is down here.
Yeah.
It tells us what product is going in, what the amperages are,
Mhm.
what your ohm reading should be, because you're going to be testing that ohm reading 3 times when you put it in. So it gives that to you right here. It tells you what each run is spaced at, 3.75 inches. And it also shows the halfway mark on the cable.
Mhm.
So you know where you're going. It also shows you where the thermostat sensor needs to be located.
Excellent. So we know exactly where the thermostat is going to be. Now that can change, and we're happy to redesign. So that T would indicate a thermostat location, and there's also a another indicator right there. Yeah,
That's the start of the cable.
Yes.
So that's cable number 1. If you look here, there's a 1 here, and there just happens to be a 1 here, and that's what we're going to be putting in. Is we're going to be putting the 50-foot cable in this spot. So that's where it starts. And if you follow it as it goes halfway, then it comes down to the end and it comes out right here. So start and end.
Nice.
And here's our floor load. It tells us how many watts.
Yes.
All that information is going to, operating cost, amperage, all that stuff is going to be included here. So you can give that to your installer
Right.
if you don't do it yourself, or at least to your electrician who's going to probably have to hook it up anyway.
Yeah, we have directly on the smart plan. And then 2, a separate electrical plan as well. That's how important it is.
Perfect.
Okay.
So that's what it looks like. This is what you're going to be going into battle with when you're going to put that floor in one day.
This is your guide.
This is your guide, and you need to make sure, we always say, please
Check.
verify your dimensions.
Check.
Yes.
Oh, my mic's working. I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Because if
Yeah.
this was started as a small tub,
Okay. Right.
then they send us the drawing. We send the drawing back, and all of a sudden that tub is bigger.
Or the tub's out and it's now a shower.
Right. And you can't cut the cable and shorten it.
No.
So if you remove square footage of your floor, then you might have the case where you might have too much cable. So that's why you need to get a hold of us right away.
Yeah, and we're really good at if some stuff happens, right?
Mhm.
And if stuff happens, you call us immediately. We're available 24/7. We assume you're not doing this at midnight, but if you are and you run into that type of problem, we're there for you. We can immediately redesign it. A lot of times, even with the product that you have right there on site, or if not, we certainly can get that to you next day.
What's so
Even
great
though
about
Amazon's probably got a drone already on the way.
Yeah, exactly. But if you look here, you also see these green numbers.
Yeah.
These green numbers are telling you exactly how long the run of cable is.
Mhm.
And then this number shows you the distance from the cable to the wall.
Mm.
So instead of just going in there and haphazardly putting it in and hoping it's right,
Right.
you know exactly how far from the wall this run is.
Yep.
And you know how long this run is
Mhm.
and how far this run is from the wall here.
Mhm.
So these are all great measurements that let you hone in exactly where you get started.
Now, one thing we should also talk about is not only are we looking at the dimensions for the cable, but also for where the Prodeso is going to go. So talk about that component, because you could have Prodeso in places where you don't have cable.
Right. And what you want to do is if you're doing a brand new install, this bathroom is gutted.
Mm-hmm.
You want to put the Prodeso under all of the tile. So a lot of times you want to use that Prodeso install because you get it installed, and that way all the different areas in your room are going to be the same height.
Mm-hmm.
So that allows you to get a nice flat surface, all at the same height, and then you can start building on top of it.
So I gave that to him just so you guys understand. Not only will we give you a plan for how to install the heating elements, but you'll also get a plan The
where
price
it
of
is.
one.
Yeah, it's actually
And
on the
it's
second
free,
page.
so what a bargain.
Exactly.
Oh, we're going into it?
Well, we're going to be getting close.
All
So what
right.
we now have is we have a list of everything that's been provided for this job. We've got the TempZone cable, the 50-foot length.
Yeah.
We have the non-heating lead at the beginning of that cable is 15 feet long.
Mhm.
That's the cable that runs from the heating product over to the wall up to your thermostat. And that's what that round thing is there.
Mhm.
And that is going to be either the leads inside of it are either going to be yellow, black, and a ground, or they're going to be red, black, and a ground.
You could tell he does tech support, don't you?
Yeah. And the way you know is red and black is for 240
Yes.
and yellow and black is for 120. So that's where you're going to be going. That makes it very, very difficult to get the wrong voltage to your product in the floor. The one thing to keep in mind, a lot of people don't really understand, is that the thermostat only sends out what it receives. So it doesn't change 240 to 120, and it doesn't change 120 to 240.
It's not a transformer.
It does not transform anything.
Mm-mm.
So if you have a 120 volt system, which is what we do here, you need to make sure that the thermostat's getting 120 volts because
Okay.
that's what it's going to send out. You don't want to be sending 240 to the thermostat and then trying to heat a 120 volt system. So that's why it's so important to notice the colors of the leads, because yellow, black, okay, it's 120.
Okay, I like that. Now, before we move on, we put this in here for a very specific reason, and that is, people like to know what makes up a system, and they also like to know, what's the cost.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do these webinars, we always like to give people a snapshot. This is a bathroom, 40 square feet, and roughly $576.16 is what the product cost would be for everything A to Z. So we put this in because, a lot of people think it's very expensive, but it's really affordable, especially if you're already remodeling. I think faucets cost that much.
Mm,
So, so not only do you have a relatively inexpensive product, but it also provides amazing quality, a great return on investment. I've been dealing with kitchen and bath designers, showrooms for 20 years, and a lot of them say, I've got this fixture, I've got that feature, but the floor heating is the one thing that I love the most because it really does provide comfort.
Yeah, and people that have it and then sell their house and move it to a new house, those people are our best customers because as soon as they move there and there's no heat, boom, they call us and go, I just can't live without this anymore. You wouldn't think so, but that's what we get calls all the time.
So affordable luxury.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
let's move on to the next slide. And here is where your favorite device is.
Yeah, there's that meter that we talked about in such a loving manner earlier.
That would be you, not me.
Yeah, this thing, it not only does it look fantastic, but it does a very important job. And that helps you fulfill 3 parts of your installation.
Right. So step number 1, we're getting ready to do the install. I hate to interrupt, but as we transform, we've just given you the overview of the project. You kind of understand now the cost of that particular project. Now you're going to step us through the install. Some of the key things that you always like to see when an installation of electric floor heating is done.
Right.
And testing is the one thing that you talk about the most.
Because you want to actually do the testing, the first test, the day you get it in the box.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as that arrives on your doorstep, open it up, go, wow, this looks awesome. And now I have to remember to test it. Because if something happens between here and your place, you want to find that out the day you get it, not the day you go out to install. Because remember, we're trying to do this in a 1-day installation.
And I do want to point out that this is the reason that we asked this is before it leaves our building, it's been tested 3 times. But as Scott says, we don't know what happens in between. You don't know potentially if it's just sitting on the job site for a few days, what has happened. So it's just the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Because that way, it gives us time to get you a replacement unit in case there's something wrong with it before the day you do your installation.
And it's a pretty easy test. It's very quick to do. Any electrician can do this test. And, you can do it yourself if you want. You can just kind of walk through it with the instructions.
The instruction manual shows you exactly how to do this test.
Yeah.
So it's very, very simple, something you definitely want to do.
So test.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we've done the test. What are we doing next?
We're going to get the uncoupling membrane. We're going to do it as shown in the installation plan. So the installation plan will actually show you what size the panels are and how those panels are cut, and then how they fit together, because you need to make sure that those little knobs all line up together. So if we take a look here, we see how we have two sections.
Yes, and those are the
next to each other.
The little knobs you're talking about.
And the knobs need to be right next to each other, so
because
the cable can run through them.
If they're off,
then the cable stops.
Yeah, it can't run through it smoothly. So
that's what's so important about that particular setup, and that is put on your plan for you. So you need to make sure they align properly. Then what you do is you cut it and dry fit it, and this is where you're going to find out if they do line up correctly. So that's what you want to do before you start putting thin set on it. You do this in what we call the dry fit. So it's very, very important to do your cuts, get the sizing done, and do the dry fit, and make sure they all match up very, very well.
Yeah, I like that. I do see that you say minimum tile size is 2 inches by 2 inches. I did get a question the other day by email, and they said, well, what if I have 2 by 2 inch tiles, but they're on mesh?
We still suggest that that's not delineated by Prodeso. We still suggest that if you're doing small tiles, that you always do it over a flat surface, like self-leveling.
Okay.
If you do a self-leveling install, it will allow you to even put those penny tiles in.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but you have to do that over self-leveling. And if you're going to be doing self-leveling, once again, it's not going to be probably a one-day install, and you're probably not going to need Prodeso.
Right.
It's simply going to be doing this cable on strips back and forth, covering it with self-leveling, because that'll allow you to use the most different kinds of tiles.
Okay, I'm
small
convinced.
to big.
I'm convinced.
So that's what's so good about it.
All right, so we're dry fitting the Prodeso, we're laying it down, we're making sure the knobs are all aligned. Anything else? Any tip?
Yeah, you always want to make sure. What you can see, the guy's not pulling it back just for grins.
Just for show?
Yeah, what you want to make sure you have good adhesion here.
Okay.
So if the reason I like this picture is because it doesn't show quite 100% adhesion. You've got a little space here that they need to put a little more thin set in, and a little bit here along the edges. But you've got good adhesion here. And the only way to test that is once you put your thin set down, then you push the product down using a roller. And then once you do that, you get it in there, then you pull it back, and then you will see if you have good adhesion. Then that'll tell you that the trowel that you're using is the right size. You're putting the right amount in. If you pull it back and you've got very spotty connection, you know that there's a couple things that might be wrong. You mixed your thin set too dry, or it's been mixed for too long, or that you just are not using a big enough trowel to get the good adhesion between those.
And if they don't get a good adhesion, what happens?
You could get the hollow sound that we do not like when it comes to tile. So you want to get a nice 99% adhesion on that, which is a very good start here. Then we know we've got one spot there on the other side there that needs a little bit extra, and one along the seams. And then once you get that little bit extra in the seams, when you push it down, it's going to come out. Well, that's okay. You just clean it with a wet rag.
So if you do get those air pockets, would that cause your tile or your grout to potentially crack?
There is a possibility, yes. But what happens is when you get the tiles installed, they're going to be like a permanent system inside this Prodeso. So if you do have a little spot here, that may not translate to the tile, because the tile is going to have a really good adhesion to the top of the membrane, which should give you that solid sound.
Okay.
But that's just something that you want to watch out for, because if you only get 50% adhesion, you may have problems with it actually not doing its job.
Interesting. All right, let's move on. Next step.
TempZone Cable.
Put the heating element into the installation.
It's not going to warm by magic.
Yeah, you need that cable.
That cable's got to go in there. And this is why it's so important to have these studs aligned, because then if we had to make a turn, we would be able to make a turn and do that. Now, you want to make sure that you have your cable spaced at least 3, which is what we show here. That will allow you to get the proper spacing. If you need different spacing than that, just let us know in advance.
Yeah, we can design it for you.
We can design it for you to do whatever you want it to do. So, but this is actually putting it in. What you'll do is you will put the cable along the grooves, and you can sometimes push it in with your thumb, or what you can do is you can use a grout float or something like that that's plastic, not steel, and then, or rubber, you can use a rubber grout float too. And then that'll allow you to put the cable down and get it inside, because what happens is those pocky pucks are this thick and the cable rests a little bit below it. So that allows some protection when you're using your trowel. It'll help keep the wire away from the trowel.
Nice. So you don't accidentally nick the heating element, because that's a no-no,
right?
With your trowel.
And let me give you the hint on doing that. When you're putting this in, you want to make sure that you fill all the gaps, but then your final should be going in this direction, because that way you're not going into the individual runs of the pucks.
Okay, so you're talking about when you put down
when you're putting your thin set down. Yeah, you want to force it in nice and good. And then what you do is then you would then go at an angle to make sure that you fill the space, but you're not hitting the cable. You're not catching on the ruts that the cable.
Smart. Thanks for the tip.
Yep.
One of the things that you like to talk about is never cross or overlap the heating element. That's a big no-no. Could cause the system to overheat and then to fail. So, and again, that's why you always get a plan. I would never buy an electric floor heating system without a plan. And that plan will show you exactly the spacing and how to install it. And you'll never see a crossed or overlapped heating element on a plan from WarmlyYours. And if you see it from someone else, run.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. They don't ask us for a plan because some people have done business elsewhere where the plan takes 3 or 4 days or a week to come.
Right.
That's not the case with us. If we get your information today, we'll probably have 9 times out of 10 the plan for you tomorrow morning.
Better be 10 out of 10.
Well, that's what we try to. But that's what we're trying to do is that plan is not going to delay you. Right. So I'm trying to make the point is you're not going to be waiting weeks to get this drawing. It's going to be ready for you when it ships.
Absolutely. I like that. Good stuff.
Thank you.
All right. We talked about this earlier. In the thermostat box is that floor sensor. That floor sensor is very important. And it's the #1 issue that we have, which is the sensor gets forgotten. And so we're trying to do a lot on our end to make sure that people understand that that floor sensor needs to go in at the same time as the heating element. We call it out now on all smart plans, all installation plans have that sensor. You saw that earlier. That's called out so that people understand, oh, I don't have that. Right. How do I get that before they finish their floor? And then we have to figure out how to go back into the flooring and get that sensor in there.
And what happens is that the installer actually has to take the warning label that we have stuck to the cold lead saying, don't forget your sensor. They actually have to take that off to start unspooling the cable.
That's true. So we provide warnings on the heating element itself. We provide the location of the sensor on the plan. So we're doing everything on our part. We talk about it a lot.
And it's in the instructions.
And it's in the instructions. And it's important. A lot of people think that that sensor needs to be, I don't know, across the entire floor. But it only really needs to go 6 to 8 inches into the heated area, so that it can get a good average temperature of what the floor is at, and then adjust it based on thermostat settings. The what's the one thing that you see that people go wrong with besides it being forgotten?
Well, the one big question we get, if you've ever dealt with HVAC thermostats, they say never put the thermostat on an outside wall. Okay. Because it might be colder over there. Well, this product, we're actually doing the temperature of the floor, not the wall.
So it doesn't.
So if you get stuck, ideally you don't want to put it on the wall that's an out exterior wall. But if you have to, it's not the end of the world, because the temperature that we're reading is actually out here in the middle of the floor.
Exactly.
So we want to go in there at least 6 to 8 inches, maybe a little bit more. That's okay. But I've heard of people saying, well, my sensor is not long enough. And once I get my jaw back up into and close my mouth, I go, how in the world did we get a case where the sensor is too short? Well, I put it out into the middle of the floor. I go, no. We don't need to put it out in the middle of the floor.
Right.
You want to put it here in an area that does not get hit by sunshine a lot. So an idea is if this area over here gets hit by the sun and this side doesn't, then I would put it over here. And if this is where the sun hits it, I would put it over here. Because what happens is the sun hits that spot, and now the thermostat thinks that the whole floor is warm when it's really just that spot where the sun's coming through the window.
Right. And if there's no way around that, You just potentially increase the temperature.
Yeah, it is what it
if you
is.
need the floor
Yeah.
warmth.
But what happens, that doesn't really happen a lot with a lot of bathrooms, but if you're doing a sunroom, that's the area where you want to try to keep it somewhere that the sun doesn't hit it. But
It's called a sunroom.
Yeah,
Scott.
I know. But there are spaces. You'll be able to find one. But there are a couple of Easter eggs in this picture.
Okay, talk to me.
Can I talk to this?
Yeah, I'm excited.
This box is actually a box that's drawn around the sensor.
I just thought it was pretty.
No, there's an arrow pointing to the box. And if we take a look, this is the tip of
That's
the sensor.
Okay.
And then
show them the tip on the other right
here?
there. Yeah.
Okay, so this part is located right here.
Nice.
And then what happens is this runs along inside the Prodeso, then along the wire. Notice how it never, ever comes in contact
with the
heating wire.
Okay.
It runs right between them, then along the edge, and then it runs up into the thermostat.
Yeah, so it's wired directly to the back of the control.
But never put the sensor wire in the same conduit as the power leads going down to the floor. Because that may cause trouble with your readings.
Yeah, because one's 120 or 240 volt, the other is low voltage,
which is probably against code to begin with.
Yeah.
But it can throw the sensor readings off or just completely block them by induction.
Nice. So that was one Easter egg.
The second Easter egg is this round circle.
Nice.
This round circle has a white spot in the middle of it.
Do you want me to wipe that off for you?
That is not going to be able to be wiped off because that is actually a marking on the cable.
Okay.
Because if we take a look, if I have permission, I'm going to go back here because I want to just correlate these two things together. You have my
approved.
There is where the drawing will always represent where the halfway mark is with a red dot.
Nice.
If we go back to this particular installation, we can see that that red dot is actually a white dot because a red dot, you wouldn't be able to see it on a red cable.
Yeah.
So it's a white dot here, and that's representing the halfway mark. So if you have installed and you're halfway through your job and you find out, hey, I'm not where I'm supposed to be, or I've gone too far, that tells you that your spacing has not been done the correct way, or you've gotten too close to the wall here. You're really supposed to start 2 pucks over, or you're too close to this side. So something is awry because something will cause this to get out of whack.
So that's your reality check.
Yep. And it doesn't make that, this allows you to not have to go to almost the very end and go, oh no, I have too much or too little. You are actually halfway there and you can go, am I halfway? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Full speed ahead.
Halfway there. Good. Sorry.
She promised that she wasn't going to sing.
And you see why.
So the next point is, now that we have the cable and the sensor in, is we want to go ahead and start tiling.
So we're pretty much done at this point, right? I mean, I would assume that as you're doing the tile install, there are some things you might need to take into consideration that you don't necessarily have to if there's not a floor heating system. I mean, we talked about already that when you're using your trial, you want to make sure you don't nick the heating element. Some people don't, they'll use a plastic trowel. They won't even use a metal trowel when they're doing this.
Yeah, and sometimes you are so used to not dealing with electric floor heat that if you've ever tiled before, a lot of times you take your trowel and you hit it on the floor to clear it.
Yeah.
That's the last thing you want to do when you have electric cable sitting right there. I learned that the first time I tiled the floor and I went boom, and I missed the cable by an inch. Normally I would hit it, make a direct hit because that's my luck, Murphy's Law. But that time I was lucky and I never did it again. But please, that's why we're here today, right? Is to go over these things that we've talked to people that have actually made those mistakes.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get them into your head. So you go, oh, they talked about this. I need to make sure I don't do that.
Yeah. Good tip.
And another thing that people, when we first came out with this product, a lot of people, what they were doing is they were so used to covering everything with a 1/4 inch thick of layer of thin set that what they were doing is they were taking this and they were, before putting the tile down, they were putting a 1/4 inch layer over the entire thing. That's not what you want to do.
Okay.
Notice how we've only got thin set on this little portion because these are the next tiles we're putting in.
Okay.
So I'm going to get the tile, I'm going to get the thin set there to fill the grooves, cover the cable. Then I'm going to back butter the tile and then I'm going to push it down in there. And that's what's going to make my bond. I don't want to cover this whole thing with thin set first.
Yeah, that would be messy.
And what happens is that thin set will get into those little parts of the divots. And if you let it dry there without anything over it, you'll be able to pull those divots out. And you don't want to do that. Okay. And we had maybe 2 cases of that the first week we sold it. They were just so used to doing it the other way. But the thing is, you tile as you go.
Tile as you go. I like that.
So
Can we brand that?
We'll check.
All right, good tips. You actually sound like an expert, man.
Well, every once in a while, let's see what happens.
All right, so we've been talking about that sensor wire being separate from the voltage wire. This is a great wiring diagram that we send out with every radiant heating system. Your electrician needs to know exactly how to wire this up, and it's not that complicated.
No, and we had a question from Christine S.
Yes.
And thank you, Christine.
Yeah, we like Christine.
Okay, let's move on. No,
No,
but really,
we like Christine.
Christine had a great question.
Yeah.
Can a homeowner install this system, or does it need to be hired out?
Good question.
And most of the time, just about anybody can lay the cables out in most states. There are some states that will not allow you to lay the cable out. So whenever you do an installation like this, we always suggest you check with your local code to make sure that what you're doing matches all the code requirements. And we always strongly recommend that when it comes to hooking this system up,
anytime
that's done by a professional.
Yeah, because I mean, you might forget to turn off the power at the circuit breaker. Those are things that maybe a DIY person might think about, but an electrician, they've certainly been trained to do those checks and balances, and those checks and balances could save you from a very nasty electrical shock. So we always recommend an electrician does this part of the install. There are actually areas like in New York where electric floor heating must only be installed by an electrician, all portions of the install, every part of it. So, just so you know, the wiring diagrams are there. It's another tool that you can use to make sure that the heating system is actually going to be 100% perfect. All right, and
so now that we've got the spaces for the thermostat, let's just go ahead and attach it. Our electrician is going to be attaching this. I'm going to test you, Julia, and let me tell you if you can answer this question.
Okay.
These two wires are red and these other two wires are black.
Red and black means 120 volt.
Nope. Red and black is 240.
Oh, I was so close.
She really knows that. She's just playing. But anyway, that's what we can see here is our cold leads coming up from the floor are going to be red and black. This is a big installation. It's 240 volts. If they were yellow, they'd be 120 volts, and that's usually for a smaller room. So what we have here is we have got our connections made at the back of the thermostat.
And it really is a simple hookup.
Yeah, a pair of the wires coming in, and then a pair of the wires going out to the floor. And
does it matter if those two get crossed?
Well, it won't work right. First of all, it probably won't light up correctly. You won't get a display if they're hooked up backwards, but that does happen. People will hook it up and then they'll turn it, put the faceplate on, and it's completely blank. Well, that blank faceplate is because you put the line where the load is and the load where the line is.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that you take a look at that. So one of the great words, and I don't know why this is an electronic term, but if you look at the back, you'll see 4 connectors or 4 screws. 2 of them are for line. That's pretty self-explanatory. That's the power coming from the circuit breaker box. The other 2 are load wires. Load means the floor. I don't know how you can make that, port is left. That's how you always remember LEFT and PORT. That's the only way. That's my only nautical term I can remember.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you can think of load as the floor, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
So you see those 2 connections in the back. The line is going to be from the circuit breaker. The load is going to be going to the floor. Very important that you don't get those mixed up.
Okay. So we're installing a thermostat. There are a variety of thermostats, but the most important thing that we like to talk about is the fact that, when you're installing it, the sensor gets installed at the same time. And then with that, you can also program the thermostat.
You get it set up correctly.
Set it up correctly for tile or even other flooring types. So what's the most important thing that you want people to know about this slide?
Well, you need to set a couple of these things correctly, like floor protection and the sensor application. We have videos about both of those. If you ever have a question about that, we'll be glad to send them to you. But floor protection, that is something that is very important if you have LVT, LVP, laminate, carpet, that sort of thing, because those things have a temperature limit.
Right.
So-
Usually 80 to 82 degrees.
Yeah. So if you're installing something
84.
like that, something like that has a temperature limit, you have to make sure that you don't exceed that.
Okay.
And that allows you to do this. So
And this
automatically,
control allows you to easily do that.
Yep.
It sets the limit right there, as you can see, at 82 degrees. If you have a manufacturer that wants it at 80, you can even do something custom. That's the last option.
Right here.
Most of the time, these products are installed in a bathroom under tile. That is the sweet spot. It's about 70% of every installation that we do. So you just select tile. I think that's the default now, though, isn't
Yes.
it?
Mhm.
Yeah. So for the most part, 70% of the time, you don't have to worry about this. So
Right. It's just very important. This is going to appear on your screen when you set it up the first time.
yeah.
So that's why I like to talk about it, because
Yeah,
it's really,
it's good.
it's the first thing you're going to see when you get a new system is, boom, I've got these answers that I need to give to
Mhm.
get it to work correctly.
And if you don't know, give us a call.
Yeah. And the thing is, tile can pretty much be heated however you want it to be
It
heated.
really can.
Yeah, you can get it really, really warm. And, that's the maximum you can set on the thermostat. Like I want it to be warm. The maximum you can set it to is 104.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's warm.
that is really warm.
We're good.
Yep.
That's like frying egg warm.
So what we're going to do is we're going to set this to tile, and then we're going to verify that our sensor application is defaulted to floor, which it is now.
Okay.
So that's one thing you want to keep an eye on.
Brilliant. All right. Brilliant.
Mm,
Really good. Well done, Scott. I'm impressed.
I did part of it.
All right. So you really, as you can see, this guy, he's got a ton of knowledge, on-site knowledge, just not book smart. Actually is out there.
The looks have gotten me by this whole time.
So if you have any questions before we leave today, please start sharing. If you want to talk to us afterwards, we're always available. This isn't your only opportunity. Let's talk about what's coming up.
Yeah, our next webinar. This is not an April Fool's joke,
Right.
because it's on the 9th, but it's going to be how to install LVT, which is also LVP, with floor heating. And that's going to be on a Thursday, April 9th at
1 p.m. We'll be here.
So make sure you join us.
Yeah, please join us. We love it when you guys are here. And then every day, Scott and others of us here at WarmlyYours do daily one-on-one trainings. It's usually just an informal Q&A where we just get together and hop on into one of those and just talk us through something. And maybe you have a project that's coming up, and or you have an installation plan you want to work through, or just a question in general. You're curious about some aspect of radiant heating or any of our other products. Join us on our daily Q&As. They're very easy to sign up for. And there's an opportunity for you to have one-on-one expert advice.
Yeah, and there's no time limit either. We could spend 10 minutes on any specific question you have, whatever. That's what we're
That's
there
what's
for.
beautiful about it.
Yep.
And then we always like to talk about what's happening. We have a promotion going on our Environ Easy Mats, not used in a bathroom under tile. These are for floating floors. So that would be like a carpet, a
Laminate.
engineered flooring that's floating, a laminate. So just making you aware of that, guys.
Yep, good sale. And WarmlyYours.com is a place to find that out.
Yeah. Tell us what you think of us, guys. Tell us what you want to hear about it. Give your feedback. If there's something you'd like us to talk about, we actually will. Give us ideas for thanks. Appreciate that, guys.
Yeah.
So give us your feedback. Appreciate that you just gave it to us. But you will be getting an email with us with the recording and asking for your feedback as well. So feel free to give that to us.
Yeah, we would much rather talk about something we know you're going to be interested in.
Mhm.
So if you say, why doesn't anybody talk about this, or what do you think about that? Just let us know, because then we can address it. I'm sure if you have that specific question, there's going to be others that are having the same type of question too.
Absolutely. All right. So, as I said, contact us. This is not the last time that we're going to be talking. Thank you out there, Samantha. Give us a call at the 800 number. There's a reason why my email is there, jbillen@warmlyyours.com. I do answer every email. I'm literally an email machine. Email me. If I don't know the answer, I know people who have answers. So email me directly. Yeah, Olivia too, off screen. So I'm happy to kind of get your questions and walk you through whatever your project is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if you like pictures, Facebook is a great place. Any of our social
Mhm.
media platforms are very informative places, very
Yeah.
interactive.
Follow us.
Yeah. So follow us there and join in.
All right. Well, thank you guys for the great feedback. And then until next time,
Stay warm.
be radiant
Bye now.
and wash your
Wash your
hands.
hands.
All right. Good job.
Oh, thank you. But we have to end broadcasting.
Oh, well, you can do that.
Thank you.